We're live, and it's time for the X-Files Retro Review, Season 4, Episode 7 through 12. How are you, Pete?
I'm fine.
Good. Tonight, we will be talking about the following episodes: The Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man, Tunguska, and Terma, and Paper Hearts, and El Mundo Jira. And we're going to end it with Leonard Betts, one of my personal favorites. So, guys, we're going to get to it, but I'm always around all the X Files pages, and I want to thank all the X Files pages that let me post this weekly, well, kind of weekly, uh, broadcast on their pages because you guys are awesome, because, but I do hang around and I see a lot of the comments. And earlier this week, in one of the groups, they were asking Pete what shows people could watch that have an X Files feel. And I was thinking about it. And you know what? I know of a few. The thing is, I don't watch them. Like, I don't know. There's nothing like the X Files. Like, I've tried other shows that are like the X Files, but the X Files is the X Files. I mean, it's influenced almost everything as far as how, because it's X Files is pretty much the beginning of what we could call modern television as far as the long story arcs and cinematic feel. I mean, some people can argue Twin Peaks did it a little bit earlier, and X Files takes a lot from Twin Peaks. But X Files is when it was like head on. This is what we can do on TV. You don't have to only go to the movies to have this experience. So in a way, the X Files has influenced almost everything. So what isn't an X Files like show? But I have a few. I found this article here and see if you have seen any of these shows, Pete. Maybe you can comment, or if you have any that you can recommend for other folks that have binged this show about 3, 4 times and are just looking for new stuff. Number one on the list is Twin Peaks, which you haven't seen, right?
No, I'm gonna be checking it out in about a month or so.
Yeah, I watched it for the first time, I think 3, 4 years ago. I know you're not a big fan of David Lynch, but I think you said you liked the first half of Mulholland Drive, the part that was more coherent, let's say. So if you dug that, which was actually supposed to be a pilot for a TV show that never happened, and they just turned it into a movie, you might dig Twin Peaks. The saving grace with Twin Peaks, so it doesn't go um, mega David Lynch heavy, is that he has a co-writer, which is Mark Frost, which kind of, when he starts getting a little too Lynchian, Mark Frost kind of pulls him back and says, let's get, let's keep it a little bit grounded. But it is weird. It is doesn't mean it isn't a weird show, and you won't feel the David Lynch vibes. I'll give that one an A plus. If you're an X Files fan and you haven't seen Twin Peaks, you should. And David Duchovny's in that show, in a very funny cameo in season 2, which isn't the best season, but it's got some good moments. Have you ever heard of this show, The Leftovers?
Never.
Neither have I. Justin Theroux and Carrie Coon. There's a lot of answers on the X Files. There aren't a lot of answers. Even the cases that get solved can rarely be explained. The Leftovers elevates not getting answers to an even higher art form. It's co-created by Lost Damon Lindelof and author Tom Perrotta. Is set in a dazed aftermath of a sudden vanishing of 2% of the world's population. I've never seen this show, never even heard of it. It was on HBO Max, so there's one. Better Call Saul. Are you a fan of this one?
Yeah, I love it. I do not see any connection to the X Files whatsoever, though, except for the fact that Vince Gilligan wrote both of them. But other
Yeah,
than that,
it was
I don't
surprising
see a
that.
connection.
Yeah, I was surprised to see it on here. What they wrote here is if you enjoy watching Dana Scully blow up her professional reputation for the sake of one man and his cause, meet Kim Wexler,
That
the
is
best
an
character.
interesting comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, the best character on the best show on TV right now. Kim is Scully's most worthy successor, which makes sense given that Better Call Saul was co-created by beloved X Files alum Vince Gilligan. So there you go. That's the connection that they're given.
I can
And
see
then
that.
and then we have a show called Evil. Have you ever heard of this one?
No, I haven't.
Neither have I. No series on network TV is having more fun than Evil, which on its surface is basically the X Files but with exorcism. So it's a CBS show. It's a procedural, but then it gets into all the freaky deaky stuff. So there you go. Um, and was it written by any Van
Darren
der Welf has
Morgan.
described the series as yeah, I see Darren Morgan here. An attempt to make
Yeah.
a new version of the X Files. That's all. That's all Darren Morgan episodes. Okay, but it's nobody from the X Files working on it, from what I saw. Fringe is a show that I want to check out at some point. I've heard really good stuff about it, but I never got around to watching it. Have you ever seen Fringe?
No, I've never heard of that either.
Never heard of Fringe. Oh wow.
Yeah.
I knew it existed, and I know it got a cult following, but I never. Leonard Nimoy even ended up on it at some point, and I think the reason I didn't watch it is because what it actually says in the article that the first season, it's obviously it's like J.J. Abrams' version of the X Files, uh, and the first season has been dinged for being too much of an imitator. So I think that's what turned me off. But once the
Right.
show moves beyond its early case of the week format and embraces its destiny as a twisty, serialized drama about parallel universe, Fringe sets itself apart. So I've been in a few TV groups where people have talked about the later seasons of Fringe, and it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. So I may at some point get around to checking it out. Because it is kind of set in the FBI in the Fringe division, which are these cases which are go outside the norm. So that's where it's very X-File-ish, but then apparently it just goes bananas. So I might check that out at some point. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Never got into this
Mm,
one.
yeah, I've never seen it. I know it's got a huge cult following.
Oh
It
yeah.
does sound like a good comparison, though, because it does deal with the supernatural and stuff. And I know my man Luke Perry is in it. Um, might check out the movie at some point. If I like the movie, then maybe
Is
I'll
the
check
movie
the series
related to
out.
the show? Is the movie at all
Yeah,
related
yeah.
to? Oh, it is.
Luke
Oh,
Perry
okay.
apparently plays the same character in the movie as he does in the show.
I figured this one's right down your alley, man. Teen drama with some
Yeah,
horror,
could
90s. I
be.
think I think you
Yeah.
might get into it. It's got the supernatural vibe where the fashion is better than the creature makeup. It's got the cozy horror aesthetic of the era. Both balance Monster of the Week episodes with larger mythology. The cult classic WB turned UPN series is a smart teen drama that speaks its own language, centered on a female action hero whose femininity and toughness complete each other. Sarah Michelle Gellar, that was her big role. For whatever reason, I never got into it. I know when I was in high school, it was big. A lot of my friends watched Buffy, but I just could never bring myself. Well, you know me, I'm not huge on teen drama stuff. Yet the next show, Stranger Things, I really got into. I thought it was really cute, and for me, this is like X Files for kids. And it's got that 80s nostalgia. So, not for everybody, but I know it was a big hit. So apparently, it's got its following, and it's cute. And you get Winona Ryder, and you get a bunch of cute 80s kids running around on their bikes fighting demons from a parallel universe. So I like it. I dig it. You don't like it, right? You're not a fan of Stranger Things.
I didn't make it past the first episode. I thought it was
Oh boy.
unwatchable, actually.
Man. And anyway, and then we got Kojak, which I've never seen, but this is the classic
This is the
show.
inspiration for the
Yeah,
X Files.
exactly. It was the inspiration for the X Files. Never seen it. Um, and
And Darren McGavin is actually in a later episode. He plays the original X Files detective. So that was
oh,
a
cool.
nice salute to him. They did. But yeah, I have actually seen a few episodes of Night Stalker, and it's good. It's like the original horror TV series.
Darren Morgan turned an unused script he wrote for Night Stalker into the very funny X Files revival episode Mulder and Scully Meet the Werewolf. Cool. Which guest stars
Yeah.
Rhys Darby in full Kojak cosplay. The snake really ate its own tail with that one. And then they mentioned Hannibal. It is definitely
Yeah,
somewhat
yeah.
Gillian Anderson too.
Yes, yes, and it definitely it there's not a lot of connection to the X Files except for Gillian Anderson, but it is definitely a show worth checking out if you like horror and television. Mads Mikkelsen makes a great Hannibal Lecter, and it's not set in the same universe as the books or the movies, but
Yeah.
it just kind of takes these characters and tries to tell a similar story in kind of a different way. Like, for example, the Tatler journalist, Freddie, what's his face? That's a female character in this. Hannibal's obviously much younger, but it incorporates a lot of the Hannibal Lecter mythology that we see in the books and the movies
Cool.
into a separate story that's similar but not identical.
I got you. Yeah, for whatever reason, I've never watched this, and it's bizarre because I've read. Actually, it's bizarre that I've read all the books except for Silence of the Lambs. I read Red Dragon. I read that the prequel one, which I forgot the title to now, and I'm pretty sure I read Manhunter, but I can't remember. But for whatever reason, I have never read Silence of the Lambs, and I've seen all the movies except for the first one. I think it's Manhunter, right? The
Yeah,
yeah. So I dig the character, and for whatever reason, in that whole whatever universe or parallel universe, but for whatever reason, I never watched this show. I see here that it's on Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, but it originally was a broadcast TV show, right? It was NBC,
it was
I
an
think.
NBC, yeah. And it
Yeah.
was a case of the network imitating like the premium networks with, or the premium channels with the short season format. They were all like 13 episode seasons, which is really unusual, but it just goes to show how influential that type of storytelling has become.
What was that other Gillian Anderson show that where she's a detective? A lot of people tell me I should watch it.
Oh, yes,
The
yes. If you're going to
Fall. The
recommend,
Fall.
yes, yes. If you're going to recommend a show that has X Files vibes, it's more Silence of the Lambs vibes, but definitely The Fall. It's a 3 season BBC series. I think each season is only 6 or 7 episodes long. And Gillian Anderson plays a Scotland Yard inspector who's investigating a string of serial murders. And it tells the story from her point of view and from the killer's point of view as well. And a lot of these murders have very misogynistic sexual sado overtones, and she's dealing with a lot of sexual discrimination in the workplace. So yeah, she's kind of like a more mature version of Scully and Clarice Starling and all those strong feminist female law enforcement type officers in this one. So yeah, I would recommend it to X Files fans just for the Silence of the Lambs aspects, because X Files does borrow on Silence of the Lambs as
We'll
well.
talk about that next week because there we got some Jodie Foster coming up soon. Um, but the yeah, aside from these, I'm trying to think. I mean, I tried to watch Supernatural. I know it's got its fans. I'm not gonna knock Supernatural. I just thought it was too lightweight for me. But that's definitely like a child of the X Files, and it lasted like forever. Like it had however many seasons, like 20 seasons or something. So check it out, I guess. And maybe for you, just it didn't do it for me. And another one that was cute, again, it was like X Files Light that I watched maybe 3 or 4 episodes of. It was on Fox. It was a show called Bones. Do you remember that show? It was like
No,
it was these two detectives. She was a forensic scientist, so definitely, I mean, it didn't even hide that it. Let me see. Wow, it had 12 seasons. I thought this show failed. Shit. There it is, Bones. Yeah, it was this. They were. She was a forensic scientist and her kind of goofy partner. Um, and she was the lead, really, the brains of the operation. But it was cool, and it was cute. It just was like too. It was X Files light, and I can't deal with it. Who is this dude, man? It was. Because his face is familiar. Who's this freaking actor? It was David Boreanaz. Yeah, he was huge at the time, I guess. But okay, that's kind of a cute show that you may like if you dig the detective kind of creepy aspect of the X Files. Because she would figure out all the stuff via her medical knowledge. And I know Fringe. It's another, not Fringe. Fargo is a show I haven't seen yet, but I heard it's a lot of great reviews, and I heard that one
Yeah,
of
it
the
was
seasons
great.
got kind of UFO-ish. Um, but somebody in the group, when I mentioned it, said it does, but not in the X Files sense. And then I gotta give props to another show that Pete doesn't like, but I love, which is Lost. If you're into the weirdo paranormal mythology, and kind of a seminal show like the X Files in the sense that it was really another bridge show for what TV became. Because it's X Files started, it had its mythology, but it was mythology light, and even Deep Space Nine also experimented with the serialization. But Lost is definitely, if you didn't watch episode one and you start from season four, episode, I don't know, nine, you're like, what the fuck is this shit? So you got to start from episode one and just follow it. So it was like Netflix show before Netflix, and it's got our man. Oh, what's his name? He's on the X Files all the time. He plays like a bunch of characters. Shit, I forgot his name now. Lost. Characters. John Locke. Who played John Locke? You know his face when you see it.
Yeah, I know the guy. He was in Millennium as well, and he was in the X Files movie.
Yep, it's Terry O'Quinn. Yeah, he's great.
That's
He's the
it.
one that
Yeah.
sold me on that show. His character's so great. I was like, oh man, I'm watching this show just to find out about this dude. He was the best part of Lost, 100%. And so he's in there. You should give it a try again, Peter. But from episode one, because you told me like you saw your girlfriend watching it, and you're like, what the hell? Try from episode one and see where it goes. It's a pretty well made little show. Um, and yeah, aside from that, I can't think of another. Can you think of another X Files ish type show that you can
I can
recommend?
Yeah, I can think of a couple. One I actually haven't seen, but it has a following, and that's American Horror Story, which
Ooh,
it's a fairly long running series.
yes,
That it's kind of like Fargo in that it's an anthology, but it's season long anthologies, and they're all horror
yes,
stories. So if you want
yes.
some horror in TV, that sounds like it could be worth checking out. I might check it out at some point. And the other one is Chris Carter's other big Fox show, Millennium, with Lance
Mm-hmm.
Henriksen, which was pretty short lived. Um, but it dealt with conspiracies and stuff. And Lance Henriksen, he plays like an ex cop who belongs to this shadow society called the Millennium Group that does like criminal investigations that regular law enforcement doesn't. And over the course, he comes to find out that the Millennium Group may not be that altruistic. They have a secret agenda. The only frustrating thing about this series is that it never has an ending. It just kind of abruptly stops mid story. So if you think The X Files is frustrating for the lack of answers you get, don't watch Millennium expecting to get any answers about anything because it's like they were hoping it would be as big as the X Files. Never got there, so it just sort of stopped.
I know that's a shame, and I remember watching a few episodes. I want to go back and watch it from the beginning, but then Pete told me this, and it kind of deflated me a little bit. But I do want to watch it. I know that there's a crossover episode coming at some
There
point. I
is, yeah,
think
and
season
it definitely
six or
had the
so.
horror vibes as well.
Oh, deeper than the X Files. I think it was way
Yeah,
darker. Like from the episodes that I saw, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this is on broadcast TV. It's like if
yeah,
you think X Files goes dark, man, Millennium is like, and I think that's why it didn't really hit with audiences because, again, this is 1990s, so kudos to Chris Carter, even though sometimes he can go off the rails. But dude was ahead of his time when he was making these shows, because in the 90s, TV just wasn't ready for that. I guess you could say, like it was the funny sitcoms. It was still Friends and Home Improvement and Family Matters. And the dramas was still kind of your light procedurals. Law and Order was still kind of big. So it went kind of dark sometimes, but not really. And then you get the X Files with all the gore and all the shadows and all of that, and then you go deeper with Millennium. I don't think audiences could handle Millennium because man, that's a depressing fucking show. Like there's no jokes, there's no joking,
No.
there's no Scully, Mulder, pitter patter, back and forth. It's just like, yeah, this is a dark world, and I'm a dark man, and this is a dark episode about child rape or something. It's like, what?
Yeah. I remember watching the first episode with my roommates, and they were completely turned off by it because there's the scene where I think they find this chick buried alive with her mouth sewn shut, and they're like, "That's it, we're out."
Yeah. So it's stuff worth checking out. And if you out there listening have any recommendations for X Files like shows, let us know. Because I dig me some weird, twisty. Oh, I'll give a shout out to one more show that it's paranormal. I wouldn't say it's X Files ish. It's actually the Stranger Things for adults. Like I said, Stranger Things is like the X Files for kids. This is Stranger Things for adults, a bit more mature. It's called the OA, which unfortunately got canceled after its second season on Netflix. But I was really digging that show. And it's really bizarre. It's about this girl who went missing when she was a kid, and then she shows up again. Just that when she shows up again, no, it's been a while since I've seen it. I think she was blind, when she went missing. And when she comes back, she's not blind anymore. And she's got all these kind of weird powers, transcendental powers to do this wacky show. In season 2, if you think season 1 was wacky, season 2, there's like a talking octopus. So then it's very, very bizarre, but I loved it. I was so upset. And unfortunately, another one that will never get resolved, and it's got Jason Isaacs on it, so it can't be bad if it's got Jason Isaacs on it. He's the bad guy, and it ended so crazy. I mean, I'll spoil it a little bit, but let's just say it breaks the fourth wall. Okay, I won't spoil it
Okay.
completely. It totally breaks the fourth wall where you're like, what? And like Jason Isaacs is Jason Isaacs through a parallel universe transaction that happened, and you're like, what? And then unfortunately we won't get any more of the OA, but I recommend it, and it's one of those Netflix shows that's got like 8 episodes, so you can sit through it in one night. But let's get to the main course, which is the X-Files. And where are we? Okay, we're right here, and we're going to start with the musings of a cigarette smoking man, which aired on December 24th. November 17th, 1996. It's got to 17 million viewers. Written by Glenn Morgan, directed by James Wong. Tonight, the course of human history will be set by two unknown men standing in the shadows. Quote by cigarette smoking man. The synopsis is basically that Mulder and Scully are told a speculative history, that's important to know, of the mysterious person they know as the cigarette smoking man. I'll let Pete go first because I know he may not be such a fan of this one. Or how do you feel about this episode?
I enjoyed it much more watching it the third time around than I did the first two. I remember when this first aired, I was like, man, this is such rubbish. Basically, it follows the cigarette smoking man's career through his days in the army. And I don't know, like out of nowhere, really, that's where it seems to come from. He's just like a regular soldier. And then he's like recruited to assassinate Kennedy. That seems like a big upgrade. Like he goes from being just an ordinary grunt to assassinating Kennedy. But from that point on, he is like the mastermind of all things evil. He's a top player in the government. He also kills MLK. He doesn't want to because he has too much respect for the man. But he's talking communist shit, but he has to do it himself.
Good to
He
know.
has, yeah, yeah, he won't let anyone else do it because he has so much respect for Martin Luther King. The thing, though, that I caught this time around, though, is that probably most of this stuff is bullshit. What I didn't catch is at the end, this whole story is being related to Mulder by the lone gunman.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get this story of the smoking man's rise to power, as it were, we find out he's also a failed writer. He's
Which is the
trying to
best part.
sell, yeah, he's trying to sell these spy novels, fictionalized versions of his own career that keep getting rejected. And at the end, Frohickey tells Mulder, it's just something I read in a stupid magazine. And you get, aha, so this is where all this stuff came from. It's not actually the smoking man's career. It's one of his shitty, stupid stories. And it totally plays like that. So when you look at it from that lens, it's actually kind of a brilliant off the wall type episode that gives William B. Davis a chance to shine. It's one of those things that if you want to take it literally, kind of like I don't know, like the Joker movie, for example. You can take it as canon, or you can just completely ignore it, and it works both ways. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Had some great quote moments,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the fact that the smoking man is behind the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl losing streak. They won something. They lost something like 4 consecutive Super Bowls, and he's
It was three. I remember. Yeah, three in a row.
"Well, I'm alive." And it has one of my all-time favorite smoking man quotes, which was taken from Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolates, a cheap, thoughtless, perfunctory gift that nobody ever asks for. Unreturnable because all you get back is another box of chocolates. So you're stuck with this undefinable whipped mint crap that you must down when there's nothing else to eat. Sure, one while there's a peanut butter cup on too fast. The taste is fleeting. You end up with nothing but broken bits filled with hardened death.
Oh, you cut out a little.
The left is an empty box filled with useless brown paper. That is a brilliant little monologue.
I'm glad you recited it because I would have done the same. Yeah, but I was too lazy to find it. Although I think we're talking about the cigarette smoking man, and he's like listening into our conversation because you cut out for a couple seconds there. But yes, definitely agree with everything Pete said. And I remember really liking this show when it came on first run, and then enjoying it again when I did the rewatch a few years back. So I was looking forward to it, and I loved it even more. Every time I watch it, I like it a little bit more. A few things to note about this episode. In the original script, the cigarette smoking man actually shot Frohickey to death at the end of the episode. Oh, and they
Oh,
actually filmed this version of the ending. But Chris Carter and Morgan and Wong changed the episode's conclusion because the actor, William B. Davis, said, hey, if Frohickey survived, the CSM's enigma remained. So apparently they lost this footage, but um, uh, that's kind of crazy if they had killed Frohickey off right in season 4. And there was some concern about,
yeah.
should we make this episode because it might dilute a little bit of who the cigarette smoking man. But according to Frank Sputnitz, a lot of fans failed to pick up on the subtlety that the version of past events, exactly what Pete was talking about, that the version of past events in this episode was only a possible history of the cigarette smoking man and not necessarily his definitive one. Frank Sputnik chose to believe that the cigarette smoking man's actual history differed from these events. So that's something to consider. And also, a few other things that I noticed is that um, Deep Throat has a possible name, Ronald. Scully
Mm-hmm.
and Mulder, one of the few episodes, or maybe the only, that they're not in, just voiceover, and they got to take a week off and go to Los Angeles. Cigarette smoking man listens to everyone. I thought that was a revelation. Is he's got everybody bugged, even the lone gunman. Also, it's a full flashback episode. We've played with flashback before, but this is the first time we get like a full on flashback episode, which is kind of cool. We get this actor who plays Spencer Mulder later on. He plays the young cigarette smoking man, which is kind of cool. Remember Spencer Mulder, the
Um, no, that wasn't his name. Jeffrey Spender. Yeah, he plays the
Spender.
young. Yeah, he
There you
plays the young
go.
smoking man. Yeah.
Yeah, but he plays the young Dean Ellsworth. He plays the young. No, I'm sorry. Who plays the young cigarette smoking man? Chris Owens. Yeah. And later he shows up. I think season. It's later on, season 6 or season 7. Spender. I put Spencer here. There was a scene there with some dark sunglasses when they were in the army room, and it kind of for me felt like a little nod to Doctor Strangelove. We got all these fake names for cigarette smoking man. Mr. Hunt, Raul Bloodworth is his pen name. I love that the whole thing with the Bills not winning the Super Bowl. That was a funny scene. And when he gives everybody their Christmas presents and it's all the same tie,
The ties. Yeah.
dude, classic. You know, he's got such great comedic timing. He's such an evil character, but if you see interviews with him, he's like so lighthearted. He's one of the he's a really nice dude. So he's got perfect comedic timing, especially with that great monologue at the end. Um, and you sort of feel bad for him. That's kind of crazy, you know? Like
Yeah.
he's just a loser, you know, that probably lived in his mom's basement for a while, can't find love. He just wants to be a writer, but instead, you know, he's um, responsible for all the bad things that ever happened. But at least he's not a racist, which is good.
Yeah.
Um, and I liked a little bit of the mythology is that the aliens show up post Soviet collapse, you know, so they say that the Roswell is actually a cover story. I hadn't picked that up on the show, which I think I don't know if that's that. You know, that's got a little bit of a plot hole in it, and there's a bunch of plot holes in it, which I think that's what Frank was saying. It's like this is possible history because I think even season 10 starts with the Roswell crash. So Roswell did happen in the show's mythology, but in this episode, it never did, and the aliens only show up after the Cold War is over. And I love the scene where the cigarette smoking man he gets all excited because his story got published and he's going out to the newsstand and he's like you feel it like yes he's gonna finally have a win and he's not gonna become this evil horrid guy that we all know and then it ends up it's just like they completely re-edited his story. This is not my story and you know you can tell that it's one of those magazines where you kind of just pay to have your stuff published but nobody reads it but he's so excited.
Yeah.
um, but we also get a little bit of real cigarette smoking man character development in that he just gets off on power. You know, he could have killed Frohickey, but he gets off on his ability to know he can do stuff, which is kind of cool because William B. Davis he plays that so well. Yeah, we've seen in earlier episodes where he he's like cornered. Like he fucked up. Remember, like that, especially that episode where they were looking for those tapes and all the Native American bullshit, and he didn't have the
Mhm.
tapes. He didn't know where Krychek was. He was shit out of luck. But it seemed like he feeds off that. Like, I'm cornered, but I'm gonna get out of this corner somehow. Like I'm down shit's creek, but I'm gonna figure it out. So we got a little bit more of that character development in him. That's like the serious part of the episode, and you see how dangerous he really is that when I'm down, when all the cards are stacked against me, that's when I'm most dangerous. And I get off just knowing that I can do something. Whether I do it or not, it's like it's up to me. It's up to my whims. So although this episode borderlines on kind of a comedy episode in some aspects, we do get some serious moments and some serious, scary cigarette smoking man character development. So I dig it a lot. But let's move ahead to Tunguska. And I read this really long article about Tunguska after I watched it from this site, which I should have. Oh, God, I forgot to save it. I'll look it up while Pete is talking about it later. But Tunguska is the next episode, and I'll tell you why I looked up this article in a second. It aired, let's see, on November 24th to 18.85 million viewers, written by Frank Sputnitz and Chris Carter, directed by Kim Manners. And after investigating the deaths of two men in connection with the recent arrival of a diplomatic pouch, Mulder is imprisoned in a brutal Russian gulag, while Scully refuses to answer formal inquiries as to his whereabouts. And we get some more Krychek, who
Mhm.
escapes the room he was locked in somehow, some way,
He was
but
in a silo. He was in
he
a
was in a
silo.
silo. Yeah, I don't know how he got out of there.
Yeah, the terrorists freed him. He
I
was
know,
in
but how
there
would they
with the
know to go down there and just happen to open the door that he was behind? I don't know. Anyway,
well, they were after the black oil. That was my impression.
were they?
I think so.
Hmm. Anyway, um, so yeah, the episode starts with Scully at a big trial at Congress. There's, that's a running theme in the X Files. Them in a courtroom trying to explain themselves. Mulder's already missing to start, and Scully's ready to quit. So flashback. Here we go. That's a very popular trope with the X Files, and just gonna kind of read some notes, guys, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't follow the storyline completely. A little bit because this episode bored me. I gave this like one of the lowest ratings of the season, but we get this customs agent who drops this very dangerous biohazardous material and gets oiled up. What a douche! One of those things is like, how stupid can you be? Because this guy's trying to come into the U.S. with this very important stuff. The guy's looking at this thing that's inside the briefcase or whatever that he opened. It looks kind of dangerous, and he drops it. I'm like, what? So the episode for me already started kind of bad with that. And then we get Krychek again. I think Mulder and Scully are doing like this sting operation. He was saved by the Russians. Um, and Krychek has, recaptured by Mulder. He was ready to kill him, except that Krychek's always got a little card up his sleeve and says, hey, I know how to. What does he know? Like, I think he knows the.
He's turned against the smoking man.
Yeah, he's turning against the smoking man. So he's got some information that Mulder wants, which is why he doesn't kill him. And he knows a little bit about what those contents were of that pouch being transported into the U.S. So he's always got something up his sleeve to keep himself alive. But he has a great line because Mulder's like, "I want the truth," and he's like, "There's no truth. These men, they just make it up as they go along." I felt that was a meta joke because at this point, this mythology was like, where are they headed to? So they take Krychek over to Skinner's house, We get some shirtless Skinner for, those who enjoy it, a mature man. And in Skinner with his line, "You'll be relatively safe here," and then just starts punching the hell out of him. It's so cheesy, but it's so good. I love every time that Skinner's on screen. Um, and then he ties Krychek up to the balcony, and ends up these guys are in Skinner's apartment looking for, I guess they're looking for Krychek or looking for
No,
information on this.
they're looking for the meteor.
They're looking for the
For
meteor.
the
That's it. That's it. Yes.
yeah.
And what happens is that Krychek is able to survive by hanging off the balcony and then throwing the guy off the balcony. And that means that Mulder needs to sneak him out of the apartment, which they don't show, but okay, he got him out of the apartment. And they find out that, hey, you got to go all the way to Tunguska. And those that don't know Tunguska, for the conspiracy heads out there, this is the only part I kind of knew because I listened to a lot of Art Bell. There was a big explosion there. I think it was 1910 or something, beginning of last century. Something made a big boom that was heard for miles and miles and miles. Maybe because Tunguska is like in the middle of Russia, and apparently it was heard all the way in England. This big boom, and what was it? Nobody really knows. Some people think it was just a meteor that fell, big asteroid, whatever. Of course, it's the X-Files, so it has to do with some alien stuff. And this meteor falls, and this black oil could possibly be something that came from outer space that landed on planet Earth. Although the movie kind of goes against that theory because it's been here since like caveman days. But in any case, Mulder somehow figures this out, and he decides, I got to go to Russia. He's about to leave Krychek in the car.
Sitting in the car. Yeah.
Yes. And Krychek kind of curses him out in Russian. Mulder's like, "You speak Russian? Ah, you're coming with me." So they end up in Russia, and they get caught so easily. It's not even funny. Mulder always gets caught so easily, man. He's like the worst guy to sneak into anything with. My God. And they get taken into a jail cell, beat the Krychek's been the punching bag all episode, but now the tables are turned because Krychek kind of knows these guys. He starts talking Russian to them, and before you know it, he's out of the cell, and before that, he tells Mulder, "Don't touch me again," because now they're cellmates, and there's a little homoerotic thing going on. And in this gulag, they're testing people. And that's where we get this really nice scene. That's probably the best, most iconic scene of the whole episode, which is here on the screen, where Mulder gets tied down, not even tied down, he gets fenced down to a table, and they drop some black oil on him, and the episode ends to be continued with the black oil going into Mulder, and oh my goodness. So I'll give my thoughts on it all after the part 2. What do you think of this? Tell me your thoughts here on Tunguska.
Yeah, well, this is their typical mid-season mythology episode. It wasn't quite as good as some of the previous ones had been. I'm talking just the first act here, but it wasn't bad at all. I think you're wondering, like, when is Krychek going to turn up again, or is that going to be just an unresolved plot point where the last we see him is him stuck in the silo? But no, we get an update on Krychek. He was freed by terrorists, and he rats them out in order to get back at the smoking man. The black oil turns up again, and we get a little more information about that. As to its possible origins and its purpose. Definitely like the not love-hate, but hate-hate relationship between Mulder and Krychek, but the way that they seem to be forced to coexist throughout not just this episode, but throughout most of their interactions. They usually seem to find themselves on the same side, but despising each other. Mulder's kind of a dick to him, actually. I mean, he did kill his dad, but I mean, come on, like if you got to work together with someone, you kind of have to let bygones be bygones, at least temporarily. But Mulder's such a hothead, particularly even the look he's giving him in this screenshot you got up, that nasty little out of the corner of his eyes look.
Yeah, doesn't trust this guy at all.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a pretty good mythology episode. I like the apartment scene. Krychek somehow surviving the balcony because he's handcuffed to it. But of course, that leads to the whole opening sequence where there's this big hearing going on, and what we eventually find out is the hearing is, why did a dead guy plummet from Skinner's balcony? That's what this whole investigation is about. And of course, Mulder is nowhere to be found. So, how it leads from basically a regular FBI anti-terrorist sting to this big hearing and Mulder being in a gulag. And then, of course, at the end with the black oil cliffhanger, I thought it all worked pretty well.
Yeah, I got you. Guys, I'm here on themovieblog.com, movie with a zero, not an O, the O in movie. But anyway, because after watching it, I was like, what did I just watch? Like, it felt like nothing made sense. And after reading this guy's article, which is very long, I'm not going to read all of it, but he made some good points. Point number one is that The X-Files by this time was a hit, okay? The Fox had just thrown Chris Carter's out. Sorry. So the show's conspiracy was kind of reaching its critical mass, and Chris Carter wanted to kind of have this colonization really happen, and he wanted the show to end. Like he was like, okay, maybe season 5, season 6, but it was such a hit that the suits were like, no, this has got to continue. So that's when the movie came out. He was supposed to have this movie. It says here, Chris Carter had originally conceived the movie to put a cap on the television series. Fox wanted it to tie more aggressively into the series. It would not be the end of the journey, but a middle chapter. So they kind of threw him under the bus. So what happens is that now they got to make up more mythology to kind of tie into this big movie that they're making. And the momentum had kind of been picking up for the mythology for the last 2 years. And now we got to make more because the Fox doesn't want me to end the X-Files with the movie. They want me to continue it. So they kind of had to meander a lot, kind of like just spin the wheels and meander. And for me, this is the one episode, that really felt like that's what it was basically doing. Doesn't really give us any new information, which in the article he says here, a lot of Tunguska feels like an exercise in stalling. There's very little here that we don't already know. The black oil is evil. The government is working against Mulder and Scully. Human experiments are taking place. There's no seismic plot twist, no earth-shattering revelations. It's nice to see the well-manicured men again. And I agree. It's like it seems like the episode is self-aware that it's just meandering with ever the cynic captured by Mulder and Scully. He mocks Mulder's pursuit of the truth. Ever the cynic, Krychek bluntly informs Mulder, the truth. There's no truth. These men, they make it up as they go along. So it seems like Krychek could be posting about the writers on some anonymous internet message board. So that's how I felt about it. I was bored to death with this episode, and the second episode didn't do it for me either.
I think one thing it achieved, though, was taking the concept international. Like, this is like pretty much the first time that we see them outside, well, not Scully, but half of them anyway, outside of the continental U.S. So well, we see them in Canada, but I mean, the show's filmed in Canada, so it's not much of a stretch. This is the first time we see them go international.
I'll give you that, because I do recall like when the titles came on, because I get so lost. I think some of these episodes are like in season 6, but they're like in season 3. So when I saw the title come on, I was like, oh yeah, that's the episode I really liked when I did the rewatch. I remember like 5 6 years ago, I really dug this mythology episode. But for whatever reason, when I watched it this time, I was like, oh my God, this is so boring. I couldn't get into it. But one of the reasons that I liked it so much the first time is exactly what you said. It took it international. And um, another thing that I guess you can say is a sort of a plot twist, but not really, is how, well, that's going more into the second episode, how much Krychek is in cahoots with the Russians. You think
Hmm.
he's just kind of squirming to stay alive, but no, he is in there for the win because in episode 2, well, part 2 of this episode, I'll let Pete give the synopsis for that one. But before that, let's go here and say that it premiered on. Let me see. The second episode here is called Terma, and it premiered on December 1st, 1996, to 17.34 million viewers. Also written by Frank Sputnitz and Chris Carter. And Mulder escapes from Russia and is reunited with Scully. Together, they continue to investigate a biohazardous material that was found in the diplomatic pouch and seems to have extraterrestrial origins. So go ahead, Peter Berg.
Yeah, so I liked the setup to this, but I thought the second act was a big fail. What I didn't like about the second act, quite a few things. First of all, that whole cliffhanger with Mulder being a test subject for the black oil, nothing comes of that.
Yeah,
Absolutely nothing. We
I
see him at
agree.
the beginning of this episode, and he's fine. So whatever happened, we don't know. Maybe it just left him after a period of time. Maybe one of the vaccines that they were testing worked. But that whole bit of him being one of the test subjects turned out to be absolutely pointless. Then he escapes with ridiculous ease. Like, I think his escape plan, he's got like 20 armed guards on him. And then he runs and tackles Krychek, who's now officially working alongside the Russians. Why he wasn't doing that from the beginning, why they went through this whole ruse of him being a prisoner, I don't know. But now he's like bosom buddies with the Russians. So Mulder attacks him and doesn't get shot. And not only does he not get shot, but they allow him enough time to commandeer a vehicle and bust his way out of the camp. That to me was preposterous. Um, Other than that, not really a lot to say about this, except that all the meat of this two-parter, it's in the first half. The second half is, yeah, Mulder's fine and he escapes and nothing comes of the hearing. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was, I mean, I didn't like the first act, and then the second act didn't help much. Uh, a Porcy movie, they did that, I guess, in the opening credits, that if the truth is out there. More black oil madness, and okay, in the teaser is the old ladies being euthanized. She gets a little
Mm-hmm.
black oil. So black oil is everywhere, and black oil, like I had a little bit of a beef with the black oil way back in the episode where Krychek got black oiled and he could talk. Like before that, when the oceanographer, whatever the hell he was, the submarine, the scuba diver, he got black oiled. He turned into like a zombie dude. His wife turned into a zombie dudette, and then when Krychek gets black oiled, he apparently can talk. So I didn't get that, and then the black oil just kind of seeped out of him in the silos. So that can kind of make sense because the black oil maybe has a mind of its own, but they didn't really follow the logic of what the black oil is supposed to do to you once it's in you. Why it decided that okay, Krychek I think should be able to talk, and not act so zombie-like. And then with Mulder, apparently the black oil doesn't affect you. I guess it takes enough exposure to it for it to affect you. So I guess Mulder didn't get black oiled enough because the prison guard that was talking to him through this little hole, was like, yeah, no, I mean, they keep testing you until one day you just don't, you just die from exposure to the black oil. How did these Russians in this gulag get the black oil? Who's funding them? Doesn't really explain that. Um, doesn't it even explain this guy in the next room to him? You know, he's got the little shank, and seriously, he's gonna like give it to Mulder? Like, why would
Yeah,
you
it
do
seems
that?
like he has kind of a backstory, and they don't really elaborate on that much at all.
Yeah, because come on, you've been locked in this gulag. Who like you're a Russian? You're gonna give your shank to like some random American guy? Um, I don't know. Maybe Mulder showed him his ass or something through the hole, but that didn't make much sense. And it was like a lot was happening, a lot of quick edits. So I didn't even like the editing in the pacing of it was way too much stuff. Like they're trying to stuff as much in this episode as possible, but not in a good way, like some of the earlier mythology episodes, which does pack a lot. But you're like, ooh, you feel satisfied. It's like the pacing was nice, and you're like, after you watch it, you're like, oh my god, that was just 40 minutes of TV. Like it felt like a 2 hour movie. This one, no, it was like boom, boom, boom. We got to get this, we got to get that, we got to get this old man. The Cold War isn't over. It's not over. To he can sneak in and out of everywhere. What's up with this old dude? He's like the
He's a
Invisible Man or
retired
something.
former KGB agent.
I know, but it was ridiculous how easily he would sneak in because um, because one thing that happened was they got they got the rock, the meteorite, whatever, got it to some type of facility. The guy that's looking at it gets sprayed. Oh, and what's up with this? And shout out to Craig, who has not made a special appearance on the X Files podcast yet. But one thing that he always has quibbles about is in Prometheus, how these supposed scientists are playing with the snake inside the cavern that they go into, and it is silly, and it's like, I might want to stay far away from some alien serpent looking thing, before it attaches itself to my arm. But I guess that's a horror trope, even the scientists do stupid stuff. Even in Alien One, I guess you could say, he looks into the into the jar and maybe you should stand back when the thing starts to open. But this guy, yeah, he like starts prodding on the face of the guy and stuff, and he gets sprayed with some black oil, which seeps into his um, biohazard suit, and he gets black oiled. And then Scully's in there doing the same thing, like peeking in up close, and it's like, oh my god, guys, stand back! You don't know what the hell this thing is. Um, but old dude somehow sneaks into this facility, is able to get the black rock. Super ludicrous plan of his. He has to go all the way up to Canada to some oil rig to burn it. I'm like, come to Raposo Tavares. People are burning stuff on the side of the road all the time. Like what's up with that? Um, and I do like that Scully is willing to go to jail to not rat on Mulder. She ain't no rat, so good for her. Another big development here is that Krychek loses an arm because if you don't have an arm, they can't. What can't they do to you? Because the oil goes into your face. So I forget exactly what they can't do to you if you don't have an arm. Maybe they're also shooting people up. I think what they're trying to do is black oil people. That might be it, Peter. You might have answered the mystery. Because one big thing that you do find out in this episode that's kind of interesting is that we got this alien threat, which is this black oil. Nations should be working together to figure this out, figure a solution. But we find out that the Cold War never really finished, and you can't really love your enemy as much as you want to. So the Russians, instead of really working with the Americans, they're trying to find their own vaccine faster than the Americans are. So that's kind of a little bit of the backstory here of why they're in Russia. So that could
No,
be
but
it. Oh, go
No,
ahead.
the reason why Krychek loses his arm is because he finds like all these employees who used to work at the Gulag who've all cut off their own arms, and it's not because of the oil; it's because of the vaccine.
Yeah, no, that's what I was
They
saying. That's what I
yeah,
was saying.
yeah,
So I think what the process is and why Mulder didn't get all fucked up is that they get oiled and then they test the vaccines on them and see what
yeah,
effects it has. That must be it. But if
yeah.
Mulder was cured, that must mean that they have the vaccine. So what? So it doesn't really make sense in the end. Yes. So Mulder gets his arm chopped off. That's kind of a big thing. Um, the old bastard gets
Krychek.
everywhere, sneaks in and gets the rock, and then they try to show up before he's able to burn the rock in like some oil rig explosion, and they arrive a little too late, as per the X Files. You know, they can't have a happy ending, and I don't know. For me, it's just a filler. Like it's a filler mythology episode. Doesn't tell us anything we don't already know. They never really dig deep into that Soviet arc as far as the Soviets working against the Americans to try to find the cure to it all. So it's an interesting concept, but it doesn't really go anywhere. And I was like, happy this one's over. This mythology one did not do it for me. So moving ahead, guys, we have a much better episode, or at least I thought so. Wait, one second. Okay, never mind. I was looking at a comment here in the wiki, but it's way too long. I don't feel like reading it. Paper Hearts. Okay, this episode premiered to 16.5 million viewers on December 15th, 1996, written by Vince Gilligan, speaking of, and Robert
Yes.
Bowman, has an 8.9 rating on IMDb. Mulder finds the body of a small girl using clues from his dreams and later realizes that the killer may have also murdered his long lost sister. And man, oh man, I had forgotten about this episode. I mean, it started to come back as I'm watching it. I was like, oh shit, this is such a good fucking episode. So yes,
Yep.
Mulder does have these weird dreams about a dead girl, and then he finds the body of the dead girl. And as I've said many times, and I think Pete has echoed my feelings about this, X Files excels at the psycho serial killer episodes. They do them really well. So what we're dealing with here is a serial killer. He used to kill young girls. He worked from around the 70s to whenever, and his mark is that he would cut a little heart out of their pajamas before killing them. A little piece of cloth in the shape of a heart. So the question is, was Samantha taken by this guy named Roach? And that's the name of the killer. Um, and as Mulder starts to uh, get closer to the case again, because Mulder worked on this case way back in the day, and he thought that it was a closed case, but hey, there's more girls out there. He gets sucked into this story of maybe Samantha is one of these girls, and that just throws a monkey wrench into the whole mythology. I love it because of that. You know, how was Samantha really taken? Was it an alien abduction or not? Mulder punches the guy, which is kind of nice, and
Hmm.
he manages to get the guy released so that he can take him back to his home to see if the guy can tell him where, can describe the events of Samantha being taken. Except that after the guy, Roach, tells his really good story about exactly how it went down, Mulder's like, you're not even in the right house. So again, we're like, almost had resolution. Didn't. So Mulder goes to a hotel with him, and the thing is this, apparently, and this is the kind of X Files element of this episode, this guy may have the ability to um, connect to people's dreams and their subconscious. So he may be putting these things in Mulder's head to the point where, while there's both in the hotel room, together. Mulder wakes up after having this terrible dream about his sister again. The guy's gone. Okay, and
Mhm.
the guy is so great. This I should name drop him. Who's the guy that plays Roach here? Is Tom Noonan. He
Mhm.
on the way up to Boston or Massachusetts, wherever their house is. Um, he sees this little girl on the plane. It's such a creepy scene, right? Because he needs to use the bathroom, and he sees this little girl, starts talking to her, and Mulder's right behind him, and the stewardess is kind of blocking his path, and then Mulder gets to him just before he can talk to the girl too much, and it ends up that he goes after this girl. You know, he escapes the hotel room, tries to find this girl, and then we have the epic showdown. They find this guy. He's got the little girl in the school bus, and the guy's like, "Hey, he's got a gun. He's got Mulder's gun, in fact, pointed at the girl's back." And what does Mulder? You know, Mulder's got this choice: save the girl, let this guy live and find out what the truth is, if he really knows where Samantha is, because he helped Mulder find one of the last two girls. So last girl would be Samantha, and doesn't end well. Mulder ends up having to shoot the guy, and what a powerful episode, guys. And for me, the best David Duchovny performance. Scully, for me, is the standout in the acting department in the X Files. Although David Duchovny is perfect for the part, he plays the aloof really well. But when you get him to like try to cry or anything emotional that David Duchovny has to do for Mulder, it's like cringeworthy for me as far as the acting. I thought this was a really strong performance. He played that heartbreak and that frustration and all those feelings, you know, like what if everything I believed is a lie about her being taken by aliens? Everything just comes to a head, and he does it in a very understated way. Very good acting performance. But Jillian, she's the queen of season 4, as you know, the episodes that I watched the last couple of weeks, and I think she won an Emmy this season for her performance as Agent Scully. But nothing bad to say, man. I gave it 4.5 stars. It wiped the bad taste of those two back-to-back mythology episodes right out of my mouth. So definitely dig it. Definitely dug it.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes of the season by far. I've finished season 4. I'm like, what was I watching today? I was watching, I don't know, episode 7 or 8 of season 5. So this is quite a ways in the rear view mirror, and I can say, yeah, this is probably going to be near the top of my list for season 4, because they do those Silence of the Lambs Vibey type shows so well, and it's very perfectly paced. It makes you run a gamut of emotions from like
Mm-hmm.
heartbreak to disgust to terror. Because I mean, this guy, what's his name?
Roach.
Roach. Yeah, he is like a real scumbag, and he's very typical of the types of serial killers that you see interviewed in prison and stuff. Like that guy from Mindhunter, Edmund Kemper. If you see interviews of the real guy on YouTube, he's just like that. Like he's jovial. He tries to interact. He's a normal guy, but at the same time, like he's completely unrepentant about his crimes, and he's kind of almost like proud of them and stuff. And you get that vibe from him. He was a former vacuum cleaner salesman, so he's got that salesman's like gift of gab, cool
Mm-hmm.
demeanor type thing going for him. But at the same time, he's also an unrepentant pedophile and child murderer, has like
Mm-hmm.
no conscience about it whatsoever. So he was really sinister. And the way it starts with the dream sequence and Mulder finding this body in a dream, um, that in itself is kind of interesting. But I think what we get from this over a period of time is that it's not so much that Roach has the ability to go into people's dreams, it's that when Mulder was originally working on the case, these two developed like some kind of connection that has allowed them to share each other's dreams. Like he's reading Roach's dreams, which is how he's finding the bodies, but Roach is reading his dreams, which is how he knows all this shit about his sister, and just uses it to, number one, fuck with him, and number two, to get out of jail. And we don't get this right away, so there does become a pretty convincing case for this guy being the one who took Samantha, because he knows all the details. He was in the area at the time. He sold his mother a vacuum cleaner, which is his mother verifies. He knows the layout of their house. He knows what Mulder was doing on that night. And so it's like, shit, this might actually be the deal, although that would leave a lot of gaping plot holes as to why Samantha turns up as an adult at least once a season. But okay, they definitely tease that carrot for you, that maybe she was just the victim of a serial killer. And I love the climax. In an abandoned bus yard, Mulder losing his gun again, this time to an escaped serial killer, is like, this guy needs, how does he not lose his badge? Like, at this point, he gets in trouble a lot for breaking into government facilities, for insubordination. But if we got to look at a recurring behavior pattern of Mulder's that really needs to be addressed in a disciplinary hearing, it's your constant habit of losing your gun to the bad guys.
Yes. He loses his gun about as often as Scully ends up being captured by the serial killer. So that's like, everybody's got their little Achilles heel.
Yeah. But yeah, one of my favorites of the season, for sure. One of my favorites of the series, I think.
Yeah, no, it probably will show up in my final list. Although I got another episode in this little chunk of episodes which I really love. Oh, I forgot to share here. Yeah, and that's what was great was this dude Roach. Was played so well in that you felt as sickened as Scully. Scully is the one that really plays the audience in this because Mulder's just in there. He's locked in emotionally, so he's not reliable as far as his moves and the next logical thing that he does. But Scully is the one that's just like, you're just a bastard. You're just like a sick man, and she's trying to pull Mulder out of. Don't get sucked in by this dude. But of course, Mulder gets sucked in because he's very emotional.
The title revolves around his obsession with these hearts. Like he refuses to give Mulder any information unless he gets his hearts back. And you can tell he's got like this really twisted fetish with them.
Yeah, and just like our first meeting with him is like he's playing basketball, he's all cool, and like Pete said, if you watch serial killer documentaries, even the big ones, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, yeah, they're kind of jovial. They're sociopaths, so they're somebody that you might have a couple beers with, just that you might end up, stewing in acid.
Yeah.
At the end of the night. But you're like, yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer seems like a cool dude. He's like kind of nice. I would have a couple beers with him, and then, yeah, maybe not. Ted Bundy the same. A bunch of women were in love with Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Charming
Richard
dude.
Ramirez too.
Yes. Oh, yes, yeah. So that's really what the X-Files does excel at. Of course, they do have their serial killers, which are just fucked up. And you're like, okay, that guy, like that one that we watched a couple last podcast, on the German title, I forgot now, on Earthy or whatever. Unhairy, whatever. Okay, that guy was just a fuck up kind of dude. But when the X Files does do the psychopath that's just charming and can sell you a vacuum, it's scary. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
So, moving on, we got El Mundo Jira, which I'm not going to read from the article this week, but I know that this is one of the episodes that they didn't like, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't as bad as they said it was. El Mundo Jira is the 11th episode of the fourth season. Premiered January 12th, 1997 to 22.37. I think that's our first 20 million plus rating for the X Files. It was written by John Shaban and directed by Tucker Gates. And it's a Monster of the Week story. The agents investigate strange phenomenon in a border town that the locals blame on the legendary chupacabra. What do you think of this episode?
Yeah, well, it would not surprise me if this turned up in the Vulture article, because basically that Vulture article is every episode that had to do with an ethnic minority was bad and insensitive. And honestly, like I thought this was kind of a great episode. Not great, but it was a very, very good one.
Uh-huh.
There were a lot of things about it I liked. One of the things I liked about it is that it did kind of take seriously the plight of migrant workers. It took you into their communities, and you know the fact that the message we're left with at the end is like how does something like this walk around in society, and you know the message we're left with is, well, they're invisible to most people. So it has that underlying message about migrant workers largely just being invisible people who are there to pick our crops and do cheap labor and otherwise stay the hell in the background. I like the appearance of Reuben Blades. He is another of the great guest stars to appear in the long history of the show. Reuben Blades is actually a very prominent Puerto Rican musician. I didn't know
Yes.
this until he appeared on Fear the Walking Dead, and I looked up his bio. But he was apparently a musician long before he became an actor. And here he plays a lawman who is not like the stereotype of, like, for example, the BD Wong character in Ghost Money, the ethnic cop who's policing his own kind and kind of siding with them, covering stuff up. He's actually pretty helpful to Mulder and Scully. And that was refreshing to not have to see them combat local law enforcement. Like, he's totally down with helping them solve this. I like the fact that there's actually nothing supernatural about this, although they do turn out to be monsters. It's because of this weird fungus that's killing everyone. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why the Reuben Blades character is so grounded. It becomes clear that, okay, it's not the chupacabra, it's just like this nasty fungus that one of them's carrying. And I like the title. The title is El Mundo Gira, which is apparently Spanish for As the World Turns. And the intention of this episode was to kind of make the love triangle about these two brothers feuding over the woman play like a cheesy Mexican soap opera, which it kind of did. So it incorporated a lot of different elements in there fairly successfully, I'd say. It had like a moral that was relatable about migrant workers. It had a good guest star. It had a good logical explanation for everything that was happening. And it kind of had a theme about soap operas as well. So pretty much thumbs up across the board for this one for me.
I agree. I mean, I did end up going here on the Vulture article because this is the last one for season 4. Because after that, apparently season 5 is totally politically correct, Pete. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
No episodes in season 5 offended this writer. But, episode 1, he just kind of explains what the episode is about, as you did. But then their biggest gripe is that Gira suffers from a now well-worn X-Files handicap of trying to be political and outlandishly scary simultaneously. In that the writer did spend a lot of time in an INS facility to talk to undocumented workers, and he showed his work and his characters and their anxieties. But ultimately, whatever commentary came of that experience was framed by the wacky the histrionic structure of a telenovela, a format that, as Scully herself implies when Mulder suggests the murder is extraterrestrial, is inherently ridiculous and over the top. Um, but yeah, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel that it was over the top, or if it was like intentionally so and done well.
Yeah.
It was funny, especially how it all culminates in the end with the two brothers getting the
Yes.
fungus and kind of wandering off. And it reminded me a little bit of this episode that you just watched, the one with the kind of weird looking guy who likes Cher.
Yeah.
Uh, it's almost like a test tube, or I shouldn't say test tube, what is that, prototype for that type of episode coming up about just these two weirdos, and then they have to just kind of go off on their own. Doesn't really explain how it is that they're not going to keep other people from getting this fungus because it seemed like really dangerous. So I figured they should have been caught at the end, but I don't think the episode is really about them getting caught, but just dealing with the plight of these workers. I thought it did a good job with that, in doing it in a kind of a sarcastic, funny way by making it be a love triangle and playing it off a little bit like a telenovela, but then putting a serious angle to it. And
Hmm.
Salazar totally steals the show, just like he did with Fear the Walking Dead. I was going to mention that too, because I was like, I recognize this face from somewhere. I recognize this face from somewhere. And he plays Daniel. Oh, I said that Salazar.
Yeah.
That's the character from Fear the Walking Dead.
Blades. Blades.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, Reuben Blades. Um, and he steals the show, man. He's absolutely wonderful in this. And what I like is that he's got his own motivation at the end. So he is cooperating, but in the end, he's as sucked into the whole drama as everybody else. Because what does he want to do? He wants the brother to avenge the other brother. Because if not, he also believes that there will be a curse. So it's funny that he's making fun of these poor migrants who have nothing better to do but make up stories of the chupacabra. But in the end, he's as much in it as everybody else because he believes that there will
Yeah.
be this curse if the brothers don't avenge each other. Um, and I love the lady who was telling the whole story. You won't believe it, but I was there. And there was a
Yeah.
supernatural element with the when the thing fell out of the sky, but you can't really trust that that's how it happened because she imagines that she saw aliens coming down, but really it was just a bunch of guys in hazmat suits. So there's
Yeah.
a whole lot of good stuff happening in this episode. I think it just misses the mark a little bit because it wasn't written by Glenn Morgan, uh, in or no, Wong and Morgan. Because those guys are just experts at getting that exactly, putting a little bit of cynicism in there and a little bit of satire and also making it serious. This one kind of missed the heart of it. It didn't have that emotional impact, which I think is what it was going for by having the two brothers in the end kind of find each other and then wander off. It felt a little bit surfacey, but I dug it. I was thinking I wasn't gonna like this episode because the last episode that dealt with like poor Latinos was that horrible one with the cats that attacked Scully. It was supposed to be like a jaguar spirit, and it ended up being
Mm.
like the stray cat spirit and a bunch of rats. So I was like, okay, this was a way better than that. It's got kind of a low rating on IMDb, 6.9. And I feel it. I mean, it's not a great episode, but it's definitely not a bad one either. Okay, moving ahead. Boom! We're closing out. with an episode that I remember watching first run, definitely, because it came on after the Super Bowl. Let's see,
Mm-hmm.
it premiered on January 26, 1997. It's the 12th episode of the fourth season, written by Vince Gilligan, John Shaban. Oh, wait, isn't that the guy that just wrote the last episode? I know he said his name. Yeah, he wrote the last episode and he wrote this next one too, Leonard Betts. Um, and Frank Sputnik. It was directed by Kim Manners. The episode premiered on the Fox network on the date I said, airing directly after the Super Bowl 31. Leonard Betts is the most watched episode of The X Files with a Nielsen rating of 17.2 and a viewership of 29.15 million people. And I was completely wrong, by the way. The first episode, always thought that this was the first episode to move the X Files to Sunday night, but it wasn't. It was a few episodes back. I forgot to actually mention which
Yeah.
one it was. Uh, but great episode, and it follows Leonard Betts, who is a guy who works in
He's a
a
paramedic.
he's a paramedic. Yeah, I'm looking stuff up at the same time I'm talking. That's not going to work. Okay, let's refocus here. So yes, he's a paramedic, and he's got one of the best opening scenes because they're in the, he's kind of has a special power apparently to know what people's illnesses are. So he's inside the ambulance, back of the ambulance, with somebody going to the hospital, and boom, car accident, and
Yep.
Leonard literally loses his head. Boom.
Yep.
Wonderful scene, gory as hell, and they went all out with the gore for this episode. I loved it. And he loses his head, and Scully and Mulder get called in for. Now I forgot why they got called in. Do you remember why did they
Because
get?
because he escapes from the morgue after
Oh
losing his
yes,
head.
God damn it!
Yeah.
This is why I have notes and I'm not even looking at them. Yes. Um, Yes, he escapes from the morgue. They can't find the body, and
They find his head though.
they do find his head in that real nasty scene where they're going through all the compost, the trash
The
from the
medical
hospital.
waste dumpster,
And
yeah.
Scully's like, Mulder, can you help me? Because your arms are a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And so they find his head, and then Scully has to do an autopsy on his head, and then he starts blinking at her, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. So many classic scenes here. Um, and then we get to meet Dr. Charles Burks, who Mulder calls upon because he's like, I have a theory that this head, you know, still has a body, somewhere. It's like the theory is that somehow, although Leonard lost his head, he can grow another one like a salamander can. So they go to this guy who's able to do this weird. Um, what does he do? Almost like this weird X-ray technology that he has, imaging technology, I should say, where you're able to see like almost like the aura of the rest of whatever that thing was. So he does it with the head, and he can see that there's shoulders there. And Scully's like, Mulder, you're crazy. And meanwhile, we do find out that Leonard Betts is very much alive, as if we didn't know, but alive in a very fleshy, I'm human kind of way. And he's working as a paramedic somewhere else. The girl that he used to work with overhears him on the radio while she's in the ambulance, goes to this other hospital, tries to find him, finds him, but he's like, sorry, you had to find me, kills her. The cops, the security guard gets him. It's another classic scene. Handcuffs him, but Leonard Betts rips off his thumb to get off of the handcuffs, get out of the handcuffs. And then I love this line, Pete, where Mulder and Scully go there to the scene, and he finds the thumb, and he's like, do you think it's Cisco or Ebert?
Yeah.
Yes, great lines in there. Um, Oh, and another great line. How, because Mulder's like, this guy could be the next step in the evolutionary process, because Mulder starts to get this theory that, hey, maybe he's got cancer himself. Why? Because when they split his brain apart, they look in his brain. It's not even a cancerous tumor or cell. It's like his whole brain is a cancer. His whole head is a cancer. So Mulder's like, maybe this guy is like a cancer, is able to metastasize and just keep growing and growing. You cut a piece off, new piece grows, just like a tumor keeps growing. He may be the next step in the evolutionary process for man. But then again, how evolved could a man be that drives a Dodge Dart? It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, Betts kind of looks like Ron Howard. That's just like a by the way note. Although one thing I didn't like about this episode was there was this crappy CGI scene. I think it was the first CGI that I've seen on the X Files when Betts is coming out of Betts, and that took me for a loop because I thought that it was just one Betts who was regrowing his head, but apparently a whole new Betts comes out of the old Betts. So there's because they do eventually find the body of the original Betts, and it's there. The body's there, so that throws everything for a loop. So it ends up he just kind of comes out of himself, and um, and that's how he tricks Mulder and Scully because they do find him, and the fake bets, the body he just came out of is the one he puts inside this car that drives off. Mulder and Scully shoot the car and it explodes. But then the real Bets runs off, goes back to Mommy, and then Mommy has the whole psycho feel to it, Mommy Dearest. And
Hmm.
Scully and Scully and Mulder get to the house, rescue the mom because we start to find out that hey, this guy to survive needs cancer. He starts to kill people that have cancer. He can't work in a hospital anymore where we would get a fresh supply of cancer. So now he's just got to go out on a limb and get his cancer elsewhere and by other murderous means. And that's where we get the epic climax where Mulder is taking the mom to the hospital, but Betts is on top of the vehicle while he followed Scully. And Scully, I couldn't find an image of this, man. It's like the best part of the show where Scully does her kung fu on his ass, but he still kind of knocks her down, but then she's able to blast him out of the car there, as you can see. But he says, I'm sorry, but you've got something I need. So, big revelation moment. Scully has cancer. This was the big shocker. And I love Gillian Anderson's acting in this because she's her usual Scully for the majority of the episode. And in the last scene, it's like she just wants to go home. Like, as much as she may not accept all the supernatural that Mulder does and all his crazy theories, sometimes shit just hits home. In this one, hit home because Mulder's like he's after people. He can smell cancer, and he found it in you. So she realizes, oh shit, I got something. Great Scully episode, which is kind of a theme here. There's about after episode 12, there's like 3 or 4 episodes that are very Scully centered, and I love them all. And this is like the first of them. We'll talk more about them next week. But I give this one real high marks. I really love it. Probably, I didn't write it down, but give it a, I'll give it a 5 star. Why not? I really like this episode. It's fast paced. There's a lot of action, a lot of gore, and it does have a very important downer moment at the end that when I first watched it, I remember first watching this way back when I was like, oh shit, mouth drop type moment. So
Yeah.
really Scully Foo, I like to call it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Leonard Betts?
Yeah, you pretty much said it all, man. It's a great episode. Definite must watch as far as future episodes go, but also just taken within itself. Pretty much from the beginning of the end, it's just icky. I mean, first of all, I think cancer is still like it's one of the most taboo subjects there is because it's so common. It's so inevitable. Like the thing with cancer is it's often portrayed as a disease, but really it's what's going to kill you if nothing else does. Like as you get older, the likelihood of your getting cancer increases to like ridiculously high proportions because it's your body's natural cell division process going out of control. And the number one cause of that is getting older. So I think it's a fear that lurks in the back of everyone's mind. Probably
Mhm.
more so people like us who smoke. We're like
Mhm.
way more likely to get it. But yeah, and we all know people who've been through it. We know people who've died from it. So it's something that connects to everyone, and it's
Mhm.
this fear in the back of our head. And here is Betts, who's a guy who's literally the personification of this fear. It's like having Betts come after you is not actually the worst thing. The worst thing is why he's coming after you.
Exactly.
And yeah, from the get go, we get a decapitation scene in the beginning. Then we get the head in the big dumpster of medical waste. Then we get him like shedding his skin in a thing of iodine, his thumb coming off,
Oh
his
yeah.
gross his gross appearance at the end. Like there's a lot of ickiness there that is visual to
Mhm.
really accompany the underlying thing that this is playing on what is not one of our most top level fears, but I think for most people it's one of those things that's always in the back of our mind. And then they turn that on us at the end by having one of our protagonists be in that situation where we don't want to be there. It's like she lived, but at the end, she's got a nosebleed and she had
Mhm.
vets come after her. So,
Mhm.
and we have precedent for this too, because I think at this point, we already know that the other abductees that she met in the previous season were experiencing cancer as well. So
Yes.
she doesn't hesitate to believe it. She knows that there's a real danger of this happening, and now it's happened.
Yeah, the move on, folks. Yeah, and it comes out. I love how it just comes out of left field. First run, obviously everybody was like mouth dropped, like, oh, even though, yeah, they set it up in season two. I think that was that episode.
Yeah,
So it's been a while though. So you may have forgotten it because hey, well, how many times has the X Files forgotten their own storylines? So you're like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, those people got cancer, but they haven't really talked about any of that abduction stuff since way back when. And it's like, oh no, folks, we did not forget about it. You thought this was just another Monster of the Week Fluke Man episode. Nope, we're gonna hit you with the heavy stuff. And I like that just a couple episodes later, it deals with it head on,
yeah.
and we will talk about that.
I
Um,
do think one of the grossest things of this episode, though, for all the gore, was when they find all his tumors in his car. He's got this like
oh yes,
refrigeration case full of tumors. It's like, ah, that's nasty, man. That's nastier than the decapitation and everything else put together. The fact that the guy lives on tumors and he's carrying them around in his car.
I know it was disgusting, very disgusting. But again, really great episode. By the way, the first episode to air on a Sunday night was Unruhi, which is that one that I can't remember the title for. Um, Hang on a second here, Pete, because I believe. Uh, Let me double check here. She might have won an Emmy for this. No, no, I thought she won. They don't give you 4 episodes. I forgot how the Emmys went run, but she won an Emmy for in. Good Lord, where are the fucking Emmys? She won a bunch of awards, Gillian Anderson. Good Lord. Primetime Emmy Awards. Wow. Okay, she won in 1997 which is the season we're on, right? Are we on 97? Yep. Okay. Yeah, strong acting for her this season, but she was nominated in 96, 97, 98, and 99. Good lord. But she won
Wow.
in 97 for oh yeah, dude, I'm sorry. And that's why I was so pissed when they did the reboot and she had to fight to get equal pay. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, because she is, although yes, she technically is like second string to Mulder. It is Mulder's story, but she's, for me, like the more I watch the X Files, the more I'm like, this is such, like she carries the show in so many ways, and mainly because of her acting ability. She's like head and shoulders above the company, which I love. I mean, I think the company is a good actor, but you can't compare him to Gillian Anderson. And she carried the show for the last two seasons by herself when he left. So I was really pissed that she even had to ask to be paid the same amount of money as David Duchovny for the reboot season. That was an embarrassing moment for the Fox network, among many embarrassing moments for the Fox network. But there we go. Went a bit longer than expected tonight, but let's do our usual rundown here of watch it or skip it. Musings of a cigarette smoking man. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely watch. Don't take it too literally, but enjoy it for what it is.
I'm with Pete. It's a fun episode, and yeah, it works as a standalone. And Tunguska,
Well, this is the thing with the two-parters. If you recommend one, you got to recommend both. I like the first half, but the two-part story together, you don't. I want to say that like you got to watch all the mythology episodes, but this one you really don't. If you miss it, you're not actually losing out on the mythology much at all, except maybe what ultimately happens to Krychek. And I think he does turn up later, so yeah, you're
he
not missing
does.
much.
He does. I
Yeah,
think the last scene of this episode, of this second episode, is him with the little wooden hand dipping some tea in the, you know, dipping some tea in the cup, teabagging. He was teabagging,
yeah,
and was
yeah,
sitting with the old guy that did all the meteor recon. But
yeah. But this is mythology that you could miss and just be fine without.
exactly, and that's why I love that guy's article so much, and I'll try to link it. And it's pretty long, but he really goes in depth, and he goes into the behind the scenes of it was kind of like that because they just had to make filler all of a sudden. They were planning on capping the series off after season 5 or 6, but instead it's like Fox is like, no, you got to continue making X Files, and it's funny because with that information, now I have a new reading on season 6 and 7, which really has a tonal shift. I mean, other than the fact that they moved to Los Angeles to start filming, but it does really feel like it's a fresh X Files, like a different X Files compared to up to season 5. There's a whole lot more comedy episodes, a lot more experimental episodes. So, maybe that has a lot to do with it. But I'm with Pete. I would say miss, man. Like, there's nothing, just like the guy said in the article, the oil's evil. That shows up in the movie, but the oil's evil. Krychek's an asshole. Okay, so maybe you watch a later episode and he doesn't have an arm. Hey, he lost his arm. That's pretty much all you need to know. And that the government sucks and they're all against Mulder and Scully. Like, there's no new information. And so I would say skip that one and Terma. Nothing earth
Yeah.
shattering. And then Paper Hearts, for me, definite watch. One of the best episodes of the series, and it does link in with a season 5 episode with where Mulder does kind of have closure. I think it's season 5, as far as the Samantha storyline. So it's an important one to watch if you watch that episode later on. So yes, definite watch.
Oh yeah, must watch, must watch.
And then El Mundo Jira. Dude, it's one of those B plot
Yeah,
ones that I say watch. Like different than Unruhi or some of the other ones we've seen. That's B plot, but maybe if you're not a big fan, you might not dig it. But it's funny enough. Our man here steals the show, Reuben. And yeah, you might dig it. You might not. You might, but I think most will dig it.
yeah, I would say watch as well. I think for all of these shows that they've tried to do around cultural specific mythology, this worked the best. So, if for no other reason than it's the best of those types of episodes.
Mm-hmm. And finally, must watch for me. One of my
Hmm.
favorites of the series is Leonard Betts. And it also is important for the whole Scully Cancer mythology and her abduction mythology. So, great performance by her also. So, yes, definitely watch. Oh, and great performance by David Duchovny in Paper Hearts. Definitely give him props for that.
Yes, yes, must watch for me as well. I think also for having a great villain as well, because
Mm-hmm.
he's one of the more sympathetic villains. Like the whole reason he's working as a paramedic is so he doesn't have to kill people for cancer, and it's only when he gets exposed that he really goes down that route. Like he's just a survivalist, and he even apologizes to his victims when he kills them. Like he
I
is
know.
genuinely sorry, not such a bad guy, really. So yes, for Scully's performance, the overall theme, and for having a pretty great villain.
Yeah, all around great episode. And that is all, y'all. Time for us to go to bed because it's late here in Brazil, São Paulo. And we'll be back with you hopefully next week. And we'll be reviewing episodes. Oh, I forgot to change the damn thing right there. But tonight we were right here. Episode 7 through 12 was this week. So next week we'll be doing the next 6 episodes, and there's some good ones. So thank you guys for watching. If you're at all interested in Pete and I's life down here in Brazil, check us out Mondays, every other Monday, in fact. And we do the Brazil Expat Journal. We got a lot of great commenters on that. A lot of great listeners that comment and join in the chat. And hey, although it is Brazil specific, it's also life specific, and it's pretty funny sometimes. So check it out. Okay, bye bye, y'all, and watch The Handmaid's Tale. It's really good. Bye bye.
Cheers.